Hello, my friend, and welcome. I'm Arthur, and today I want to sit with you for a while and talk about something almost every one of us over 60 knows intimately, but almost nobody talks about honestly. I'm talking about the afternoons when your eyes get heavy, when the chair suddenly feels too comfortable, when you tell yourself you'll just close your eyes for a minute and then 2 hours disappear. Tell me, does that happen to you? Do you fight it because somewhere along the way somebody convinced you that resting in daylight means something is wrong with you? I want you to set that thought down today, because the truth about why we get tired as we age is so much richer and so much more human than anyone ever explained to us. Here is what I've come to believe after many years and many conversations with people just like you and me. Sometimes tiredness is simply the body asking for repair. But sometimes, my friend, tiredness is a feeling wearing a disguise. Sometimes what looks like sleepiness is actually grief that never finished grieving. Sometimes it's a heart that has grown quiet because the house has grown quiet. And sometimes, if we're honest with ourselves, it's loneliness that has learned to hide inside an afternoon nap because sleep doesn't ask questions the way people do. I want to tell you about a man I knew named Walter. Walter was 74, a retired train conductor, the kind of man who prided himself on never sitting still for long. For 40 years he had a schedule, a whistle, a reason to be somewhere. And then one day, retirement came, and the schedule disappeared. At first, Walter filled his days the way he always had, moving, fixing things around the house, visiting the hardware store just to have somewhere to go. But slowly, without him even noticing, the naps began. First it was 10 minutes in his recliner after lunch. Then it became an hour. Then, some days, it became the whole afternoon, and Walter would wake up to a darkening window and wonder where the day had gone. His daughter noticed first. She'd call in the afternoon and get no answer. Call again an hour later, and Walter would pick up sounding groggy, apologetic, embarrassed. She started to worry, the way children do, that something was medically wrong. But one Sunday, she drove over unannounced and found her father sitting in his recliner, awake, just staring at the wall where his old conductor's cap used to hang before he packed it away. She asked him gently, "Dad, are you tired, or are you just missing something?" And Walter, this man who had never cried in front of his children in his entire life, felt his eyes fill up, because for the first time, somebody had asked the real question. That's the question I want to leave sitting with you today, my friend. Am I tired, or am I missing something? Because those two things feel almost identical from the inside, but they need completely different kinds of care. Let's talk honestly about why our bodies change the way they do after 60, because understanding this is the first gift we can give ourselves. When we were younger, sleep was simple. We closed our eyes at night, and 8 hours later we opened them again, refreshed, ready. But the body doesn't work that way forever. As we move through our 60s and 70s, our sleep architecture changes. We spend less time in the deep, restorative stages of sleep at night. We wake more easily to small sounds, a creaking floor, a passing car, our own thoughts. Many of us find ourselves wide awake at 3 in the morning, staring at the ceiling, wondering why our minds have chosen this particular hour to replay every conversation we've ever had. Because the night becomes lighter and more fragmented, the body naturally looks for a way to make up the difference during the day. This is not weakness, my friend. This is biology, doing exactly what it's designed to do. Nature doesn't punish us for aging. Think about it. Even the oldest oak tree in the forest still bends when the wind asks it to. Rest is not surrender. Rest is wisdom that younger bodies haven't learned yet. I think of a woman named Dolores, who I met at a community garden a few summers back. Dolores was 79, sharp as anyone I've ever spoken with, and fiercely proud of it. She told me once with a little smile, "Arthur, I refuse to nap. Napping is what old people do, and I am not old. I am experienced." I admired her spirit, truly. But a few months later I saw her again, and she looked different. Tired around the eyes in a way that sitting still doesn't fix. She admitted to me that she'd been forcing herself to stay busy every single afternoon, refusing to rest, convinced that stopping meant losing, And what she'd gained from that stubbornness wasn't strength, it was exhaustion that never had a chance to heal. Eventually, her own doctor said something to her that she repeated to me almost word for word. He said, "Dolores, your body isn't trying to retire you from life. It's just asking you to slow the pace for 20 minutes so you can enjoy the rest of the day." That sentence rearranged something in her. She began allowing herself short rests, 20 minutes, no more, and within weeks, she told me her patience had returned, her garden work felt lighter, and her evenings with her grandchildren felt present again instead of foggy. This is the part I really want you to hear, my friend. A short rest, taken with intention, can be one of the healthiest things we do for our aging minds. Research and simple lived experience both point to the same truth. A brief nap, somewhere around 20 to 30 minutes, can sharpen memory, ease stress on the heart, and lift our mood for the rest of the day. Think of it like a phone that's run down to 15%. A quick charge brings it back to life. But leave it plugged in too long, and something in the system gets thrown off balance. That balance is where so many of us lose our way. Because there's a very real difference between a nap that restores you and a nap that swallows the day whole. It usually doesn't happen all at once. It creeps in slowly. You sit down for just a moment, and that moment stretches into an hour, then two, and you wake up feeling heavier than before you closed your eyes. If this has happened to you, please don't be ashamed. It happens because long naps, especially in the later hours of the day, confuse the body's internal clock. Nighttime sleep gets thinner as a result, so the next afternoon you feel just as drained, and the cycle quietly repeats itself. This is why I always say, if you're going to rest, rest on purpose, and rest briefly. 20 minutes, ideally sometime in the early afternoon, is usually enough to refresh without stealing from your night. But here is the deeper truth, the one I really came here to share with you today. Sometimes the exhaustion we feel has almost nothing to do with sleep at all. I want to tell you about a woman named Constance. Her husband of 51 years passed away 2 winters ago, and not long after, her family noticed she had started sleeping almost every afternoon, sometimes drifting off even during their visits. Her son assumed it was simply her age catching up with her. But one afternoon, Constance said something to me that I still think about. She said, "Arthur, when I'm asleep, the house doesn't feel so empty." That single sentence told me everything. Constance wasn't battling her body. She was battling silence. And sleep had quietly become the only place where that silence didn't hurt so much. If any part of that story feels familiar to you, I want you to hear me clearly. You are not lazy. You are not broken. You are a person who has loved deeply enough that the absence of that love aches in a physical way. That ache is real, and it deserves gentleness, not shame. This is why, after 60, taking care of our emotional world matters every bit as much as taking care of our bodies. Yes, rest when your body asks for it, but also make room for the things that wake the soul back up. A phone call to an old friend, sunlight on your face in the morning, a conversation that makes you laugh without meaning to. These things don't replace rest, but they remind the heart that it still has somewhere to be, someone to reach for, some reason to stay a little more awake for life. Now let's talk about something we don't discuss enough, the hidden reasons behind exhaustion that has nothing to do with getting older at all. So many of us, when we feel tired all the time, simply say, "Well, I suppose this is just what old age feels like." But my friend, please don't accept that answer too quickly. Sometimes constant fatigue is the body's way of waving a flag about something else entirely. Poor sleep at night, side effects from medication, low iron, thyroid changes, dehydration, untreated sleep apnea, anxiety we've carried so long we've stopped noticing it, and yes, depression, can all disguise themselves as simple tiredness. And too often, the people who love us ask about our blood pressure and our knees, but nobody thinks to ask how our heart is doing, the emotional heart, not the physical one. I remember a man named Gerald, a retired mechanic, the kind of man who fixed everyone's problems but rarely spoke about his own. After he stopped working, his days grew quiet in a way he wasn't prepared for. The phone that used to ring with customers stopped ringing at all. His children were busy building their own lives. And slowly, Gerald began sleeping longer and longer stretches in his chair. His family assumed retirement, simply agreed with him. But the truth was that Gerald no longer felt needed by anyone, and when a person stops feeling needed, something in them grows tired in a way that has nothing to do with the hours they've slept. One afternoon, his grandson stopped by unannounced and found him dozing at 3 in the afternoon. When Gerald woke, a little embarrassed, his grandson simply said, "Grandpa, tell me about the time you rebuilt that old Ford engine. I never get tired of that story." And something in Gerald's face changed instantly. He sat up a little straighter. His eyes, for the first time in weeks, looked awake. That's the power of feeling useful, my friend. It's medicine that no pill can replicate. This is why staying connected to others isn't a luxury as we age. It's closer to a necessity. Call someone before they call you. Say yes to the invitation even when your first instinct is to stay home. Talk to your neighbor. Smile at the person behind the counter at the grocery store. None of this cures every kind of fatigue, but isolation quietly drains our energy in ways we rarely trace back to their true source. There's another piece of this puzzle that surprises people every time I mention it. Movement creates energy. It sounds backwards, doesn't it? You'd think if you're tired, you should sit still and conserve what little strength you have. But the body wasn't built that way. A short walk, watering the plants on the porch, folding laundry while listening to music you love, these small movements often wake up more energy than they use. I think of a woman named Josephine, 81 years old, who told me once, "Arthur, on the days I don't move, my tiredness gets louder." I've never forgotten that phrase. Her tiredness gets louder. As if fatigue is a voice that grows more insistent, the quieter and stiller our days become. So ask yourself gently tonight, the way I like to ask myself sometimes, am I truly tired, or has my heart simply grown heavy? That question deserves patience, not a quick answer. Because healing after 60 isn't only about the body. Sometimes it's the spirit that needs tending to. Now let's talk about how to rest the right way, because most of us were genuinely never taught this. Many of us turn a nap into an accidental 3-hour sleep marathon simply because we don't understand our own sleep cycles. You sit down, close your eyes for a few minutes, and wake up disoriented, mouth dry, more foggy than before you sat down. That happens because your brain slipped into deep sleep, and waking suddenly from deep sleep leaves the body scrambling to catch up. This is why 20 to 30 minutes, taken sometime between 1 and 3 in the afternoon, tends to work so much better than a long, late, undefined nap. Late naps, especially ones that creep into the evening, can quietly steal from your nighttime sleep, and then you're left wondering why you're exhausted all day but wide awake at midnight. I want to tell you about Bernard, 76 years old, recently retired from decades running his own little shoe repair shop. Every evening after dinner, Bernard would fall asleep in his armchair around 7, in front of the television. Then he'd lie awake until 2 or 3 in the morning, utterly confused about why sleep wouldn't come. He assumed insomnia had simply arrived with age. But the real culprit wasn't the night at all, it was that early evening sleep quietly eating into his nighttime rest. Once Bernard shifted that long evening doze into a short, intentional afternoon rest instead, his nights transformed. And so did something else. His mood softened. He became more patient with his wife, more present with his grandchildren, less irritable over small things. Sleep, it turns out, touches almost everything we feel. The environment around your rest matters too, more than most of us realize. Napping with the television blaring, or slumped awkwardly in a chair that strains your neck, or in a room so dark it swallows the whole afternoon, none of these support real rest. Instead, try this. Let a little natural light in. Keep the space calm. Use a light blanket if you like. Set a gentle alarm if you know you tend to drift too long. And rest with intention, not with a kind of quiet hopelessness. There's a real difference between thinking, "My body could use 20 minutes," and thinking, "I just want this day to be over." If you ever notice that second thought creeping in, please talk to someone about it. A friend, a doctor, anyone who can sit with you in that feeling. I met a woman named Alice, 80 years old, who told me something I still carry with me. She said, "I noticed I started sleeping too much, the same season I stopped having anything to look forward to." Isn't that something? We need anticipation, my friend, no matter our age. We need a reason to want tomorrow to arrive. After retirement, so many of us quietly lose the structure that used to organize our days, work, responsibility, people depending on us. When that structure disappears without being replaced, emptiness moves in, and emptiness has a way of looking exactly like fatigue. So take your rest, my friend, but don't let rest become a replacement for living. The two are not the same thing, even though from a tired chair on a quiet afternoon, they can feel awfully similar. Let's talk now about why some of us feel exhausted even after what should have been plenty of sleep. Have you ever slept a full night, taken a nap the next day, gone to bed early again, and still woken up feeling like you never rested at all? If that sounds familiar, you are far from alone, and I want you to hear this clearly. Not all exhaustion comes from a lack of sleep. Sometimes the body is tired, but sometimes it's the mind that never actually powered down. I spoke once with a woman named Ruth, 78, who napped nearly every single afternoon for close to 3 hours and still woke up feeling drained. She blamed her age at first, the way most of us do. But in one honest conversation, she admitted that every night before sleep, her mind replayed old arguments, old regrets, words she wished she'd said differently decades ago, people she missed more than she let anyone see. Her body was resting. Her mind was working the night shift. So many of us do this without even realizing it, especially in the quiet hours, because silence has a strange way of making old memories speak louder. This is why making peace with our own past becomes one of the most important forms of health after 60. And I want to be clear, making peace doesn't mean pretending everything in our lives was perfect. It means we stop sentencing ourselves, over and over, for simply having been human. I think of a man named Elmer who told me plainly, "For years I thought I was just physically worn out. Then one day I realized I was carrying regret, and regret is heavier than anything I ever lifted at work." Stress like that doesn't stay in the mind, my friend. It moves into the body. It touches our sleep, our blood pressure, our appetite, our memory. This is part of why grief and loneliness can make a person feel older almost overnight. The body feels whatever the heart is quietly carrying. I also think of a woman named Frances, 83, who spent nearly a year sleeping through most of her afternoons after losing her husband. Her granddaughter began inviting her on short morning walks. At first, Frances resisted, insisting she was simply too tired. But after several weeks of gentle persistence, something shifted. Her naps grew shorter. Her laughter came back a little at a time. One morning, walking slowly beside her granddaughter, she said, "I thought what I needed was more sleep. It turns out what I needed was more life." I don't think I'll ever forget the way she said it. So here is the biggest lie I want to gently take away from you today, my friend, if you've been carrying it. The lie says, because I'm older now, slowing down means my life is winding toward its end. That simply isn't true. Slowing the pace is not the same thing as giving up. Needing rest does not make you less capable, less valuable, or less alive. One of the real gifts of growing older is finally learning the difference between exhaustion and peace, something most of us never had time to learn while we were young and rushing through everything. For so many years, many of us lived without real rest at all, raising families, working long hours, taking care of everyone around us before we ever took care of ourselves. And now, in this new season, the body is finally allowed to ask, can we slow down now? Please don't answer that question with guilt. Answer it with the same kindness you would offer an old dear friend, because that's exactly what your body is to you. There is a healthy way to slow down, and there's an unhealthy way, and knowing the difference matters. Healthy slowing down looks like protecting your peace, resting on purpose, simplifying what doesn't need to be complicated. Unhealthy slowing down looks like quietly disappearing from your own life, no longer answering the phone, no longer stepping outside, no longer laughing at the things that used to make you laugh. I knew a woman named Beatrice. 81, who withdrew this way after losing several close friends in a short span of time. Her daughter told everyone, "Mom just sleeps all the time now." But when I sat with Beatrice myself, I realized the truth was heavier than tiredness. She hadn't lost her energy. She had lost her excitement for tomorrow. And that kind of exhaustion, my friend, doesn't heal with more sleep. It heals with more reasons to look forward to the morning. So here's what I'd ask of you before we close today. Open the curtains earlier than you usually do. Call someone first instead of waiting for the phone to ring. Learn one small new thing, however tiny. Say yes to a conversation you'd normally avoid out of tiredness. Purpose doesn't have to be large to matter. Watering a plant, feeding a bird outside your window, cooking a meal for someone you love, sharing a story from your life with someone who's never heard it, these small things are medicine, my friend, real medicine, and no prescription can fully replace them. I met a man named Samuel not long ago, 91 years old, sharp-eyed and gentle, and I asked him what kept his mind feeling so alive after so many years. He told me, "Every morning, before my feet even touch the floor, I try to find one thing I'm grateful for." That one small habit had changed the entire shape of his days. Gratitude, it turns out, wakes up the mind in a way that nothing else quite does. So, my friend, as we come to a close today, I want you to remember something simple, but something I believe with my whole heart. Growing older is not a weakness. Needing rest does not make you lazy, and closing your eyes in the afternoon does not mean you've given up on life. Your body has carried you through decades, through hardship, through love and loss and everything in between, and of course it sometimes asks to rest. That is simply human. But I also want you to remember the deeper truth we've walked through together today. Not all tiredness comes from age. Sometimes the body is tired, and sometimes the heart is tired, and those two things ask for very different kinds of care. Rest your body when it truly needs rest. But don't let rest quietly replace the living that's still waiting for you. I once heard someone say, "The days I feel most alive aren't the days I sleep the longest, they're the days I feel connected to life again." I've carried that with me ever since, and I hope you'll carry it too. So tonight, before you close your eyes, ask yourself gently, what still brings a little light into my life? And then hold on to that thing, whatever it is, because no matter how many years you've lived, there is still beauty waiting ahead of you. Still mornings worth opening your eyes for. Still people who need exactly the wisdom only you can give them. Thank you for spending this time with me today. If these conversations mean something to you, I'd love for you to stay close, and I'd love even more to hear from you. Tell me in the comments how old you are and where in the world you're joining me from. And tell me honestly, do you nap during the day? And after today, do you think you'll look at it a little differently? I read every story you share with me, and I promise you, you are never as alone in this as it might feel some afternoons. Take care of your body, protect your peace, and I'll see you again very soon, my friend.